Welcome to the Vertical Sky Journal, the podcast that brings you everything you could ever want to know about Kilimanjaro. The climbing and the fitness, altitude and nutrition, the environment, the wildlife, and the people at the heart of the mountain. Today, the thing that worries climbers most and stops more of them than anything else, altitude sickness. What it really is, and why it has almost nothing to do with how fit you are.
It's quite a topic, isn't it?
It really is, because,
Yeah.
well, imagine you've just spent the last 6 months getting into the absolute best physical shape imaginable.
Right. Running long distances, the gym, all of it.
Exactly. You've been training relentlessly, and your resting heart rate belongs to an elite athlete. You arrive in Tanzania, lace up your boots, start the ascent of Africa's highest peak, and then you fail.
You just don't make it to the summit.
You don't. Yet the person who does reach the summit, the person who steadily walked past you while you were sitting incapacitated on the side of the trail, well, they barely trained at all.
It's a massive paradox.
It is. If you think doing months of intense cardiovascular training makes you immune to the mountain, you are completely wrong. In fact, being exceptionally fit might actually be your biggest downfall on this specific peak.
Yeah, it's an incredibly counterintuitive reality. I mean, we're conditioned to believe physical fitness is this, ultimate shield against environmental challenges.
Right. We assume a stronger heart naturally powers us through.
Spot on. But Kilimanjaro operates by an entirely different set of physiological rules. The single biggest obstacle climbers face there has almost nothing to do with muscular strength.
It's not about how many miles you can run.
Not at all. The challenge is entirely atmospheric, and surviving it requires an understanding of cellular biology rather than a rigorous gym routine.
Which brings us to the core of this deep dive into Graham Noble's article on navigating altitude. Before we talk about how to survive, we really need to understand the biology of what's happening to the body as it goes up to that 5,295-meter summit.
Yeah, we have to define what thin air actually means.
Right. What is the environment actively doing to us up there?
Well, the crucial thing to understand is how drastically the atmospheric pressure changes. The percentage of oxygen in the air remains exactly the same. It's always about 21%.
Oh, really? The
Yep.
percentage doesn't change.
No, it doesn't. But as you ascend, the atmospheric pressure drops significantly. There's just less weight of air pressing down from above.
Ah, I see. So the molecules spread out?
Exactly. The oxygen molecules spread much further apart. So every single breath you take carries fewer of those molecules into your lungs.
Right.
By the time you reach the summit of Kilimanjaro, the atmospheric pressure is roughly half of what it is at sea level.
Half. I mean, operating on half the oxygen sounds like an immediate crisis for the human body.
It is a crisis, initially. But the human body is remarkably adaptable. It responds to this hypoxic environment, this low oxygen environment, by kicking a series of survival mechanisms into overdrive.
So what happens first?
First, your breathing rate increases automatically to pull a greater volume of air into the lungs. Then your kidneys detect the low oxygen and release a hormone.
Erythropoietin, right?
Yes, erythropoietin, which signals your bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. And these new red blood cells are essential because they carry whatever oxygen is available more efficiently to your tissues.
But there's a biological catch, isn't there?
A massive one. Creating those new red blood cells takes time.
Right.
Altitude sickness, or acute mountain sickness, is simply the biological consequence of your upward pace outstripping your body's ability to adapt.
You're demanding oxygen that your current blood chemistry simply cannot deliver.
Spot on.
But, let me play devil's advocate here. If my heart and lungs are in absolute peak condition from running, shouldn't my body be far more efficient at processing oxygen anyway?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, shouldn't a marathon runner adapt faster than someone who just spends their evenings on the sofa?
That assumption is the exact trap so many athletic climbers fall into. Cellular adaptation is entirely about time exposure to thinner air, not your cardiovascular capacity.
So you can't just power through it?
No, you cannot rush biological processes by having stronger leg muscles. The creation of those new red blood cells takes a specific amount of time, entirely regardless of your marathon time.
Which explains why the fittest climbers often struggle the most.
Exactly. They're used to pushing through physical discomfort, so they stride up the trail on the lower slopes, arrive at the next camp hours ahead of schedule, and sit there feeling quite invincible.
Because their muscles aren't tired, they haven't even broken a sweat, so they assume they're winning.
Precisely. While their muscular system feels fine, their internal blood chemistry is quietly falling dangerously behind.
They just haven't given their systems the hours necessary to adjust.
Right. And by day 3 or 4, That delayed biological adaptation catches up with them. Hard.
Meanwhile, the climber who adopts the local Tanzanian mantra of pole, going slowly well, they win.
They do. They give their body the gradual time it needs. They let the adaptation happen continuously, step by slow step, allowing the bone marrow to keep pace with the ascent. On Kilimanjaro, strategic pacing beats physical fitness every single time.
Going slowly beats being fit. It's a complete reversal of how we normally approach a physical challenge.
It really is.
So since pacing is everything, it obviously requires a heightened awareness of how your body is feeling. We have to differentiate between the expected discomfort of the climb and a true medical emergency.
Yes, because, quite frankly, nobody feels perfectly healthy at 5,000 meters. You must anticipate feeling somewhat unwell.
The trick is knowing what's normal, right? I understand most people start feeling symptoms once they cross the 3,000-meter mark.
That's right. Normal symptoms include a mild, lingering headache, some nausea, and a reduced appetite. You'll likely feel deeply tired, you'll become breathless quickly upon exertion, your sleep will be broken, and you might have some mild dizziness.
Reading that list of normal symptoms, the best analogy is a mild, lingering hangover.
A hangover. Yeah, that's actually quite a good way to put it.
You got a headache, you're slightly nauseous, you really don't want a large meal, and you just have to rest, drink water, and let your body process it.
The hangover analogy is highly accurate for how it feels. And the biological mechanism behind that mild headache is actually your brain's blood vessels dilating. They're trying to bring in more blood to compensate for the lower oxygen, which slightly increases the pressure inside your skull.
Ah, so that's where that ache comes from.
Exactly. And just like a hangover, those normal symptoms usually ease as you rest in camp, hydrate thoroughly, and allow your body the time to catch up.
But the danger arises when climbers confuse those normal symptoms with the severe warning signs.
That's when it gets incredibly serious. The severe signs indicate the acclimatization process has completely failed, and life-threatening conditions are developing rapidly.
And what are we looking out for there?
We're talking about a severe headache that simply won't lift with painkillers, repeated vomiting, ataxia, which is a loss of physical balance or stumbling, confusion, breathlessness when you're completely at rest inside your tent, or a wet, rattling cough.
So if the normal symptoms are a hangover, those severe symptoms are the body's check engine light flashing bright red.
Absolutely flashing red.
But wait, if a climber experiences a wet cough or resting breathlessness, what is actually happening inside their body? Why is a lack of oxygen causing a wet cough?
Well, those severe signs are indicators of conditions known as HACE and HAPE.
HACE and HAPE.
Right. HACE stands for high-altitude cerebral edema, and HAPE is high-altitude pulmonary edema. The mechanism behind them is fascinating, but terrifying.
Let's look at the pulmonary edema, the lungs.
Okay, so in a normal environment, if part of your lung isn't getting enough oxygen, your blood vessels constrict in that specific area to divert blood to a better ventilated part of the lung.
A clever biological trick.
It is. But at extreme altitude, your entire lung is starved of oxygen. So your body reacts by constricting blood vessels everywhere in the lungs.
Oh, wow. Everywhere at once.
Yes. And this causes a massive spike in pulmonary blood pressure. The pressure becomes so intense that it forces fluid actual plasma from your blood to physically leak through the capillary walls directly into your lung tissue.
That sounds horrific. So that fluid buildup is what causes the resting breathlessness and the wet cough.
Exactly. You are effectively drowning in your own fluids. And HACE works on a very similar principle, but the fluid leaks into the brain tissue.
Which causes the severe headache, the loss of balance, the confusion.
Because the brain is swelling against the skull.
These are mechanical failures of the body under extreme pressure. You can't just tough that out with willpower or a positive attitude, can you?
Not at all. Willpower is entirely useless against pulmonary or cerebral edema. These conditions do not respond to rest, and basic medication won't touch them. The physiological cascade is already underway.
So what's the treatment?
The only reliable treatment is immediate descent. You must get the climber to a lower altitude where the atmospheric pressure is higher, which forces more oxygen into each breath and reverses that extreme blood vessel constriction.
And a responsible guide will not hesitate to turn you around.
Not for a single second. If those signs appear, you are walking down the mountain.
Right. Well, if immediate descent is the only biological cure once things go wrong, the obvious question is how we stop the body from triggering that pressure spike in the first place.
Prevention is everything.
And according to the journal, that prevention actually starts before you even arrive in Africa or book your flights.
It does. It entirely comes down to your route strategy. The most powerful protection against altitude sickness is simply the number of days you spend on the mountain. Time is the ultimate preventative tool.
So longer road is better.
Vastly superior. When you look at the success rates, routes of 7, 8, or 9 days are much safer because they utilize a proven mountaineering philosophy known as climb high, sleep low.
Climb high, sleep low. Explain the biological mechanics of that. Why is that specific topographical movement so effective?
Well, it's a brilliant method of coaxing the body into adaptation without completely overwhelming it. During the day, you hike up to a higher altitude, perhaps crossing a high ridge.
Exposing yourself to much thinner air.
Exactly. That acts as the biological trigger. It stresses the system and sends the signal to your kidneys to start releasing that hormone to build red blood cells. But then, instead of pitching a tent and staying at that highly oxygen-deprived altitude,
You hike back down.
yes, you hike back down several hundred meters to a lower camp to sleep. This allows your body to execute the adaptation process in a slightly richer oxygen environment.
So you get the stimulus of the high altitude, followed by the recovery of the lower altitude.
Precisely. You're systematically pushing the biological boundary, then retreating to let the body catch up in relative safety.
I can see the biological logic perfectly. But if I'm looking at booking this trip online, I'm inevitably going to see companies advertising much cheaper 5-day climbs.
Yes, you will.
It's a faster itinerary, it costs significantly less money, it requires fewer days off work. For a naturally optimistic person, there's a huge temptation to just book the shorter route and hope they get lucky.
It is a massive false economy, though, and the biology simply doesn't support it. These budget 5-day climbs force a linear, rapid ascent up the side of the mountain. They just don't have the time or the topographical variations to utilize the climb high, sleep low rhythm.
So it's just constant upward stress.
Constant, increasing hypoxic stress with zero opportunity for recovery. As a direct result, the altitude sickness rates on these short routes absolutely skyrocket, and the summit success rates plummet.
Paying for an extra 2 or 3 days on a proper itinerary is quite literally the best insurance policy you can buy them.
Without a doubt.
Speaking of insurance, what about pharmaceutical insurance? Climbers frequently discuss taking medication, specifically Diamox, to help with the altitude.
Ah, yes, Diamox.
How does that fit into the strategy?
Well, Diamox, or acetazolamide, is a prescription medication that accelerates the acclimatization process. It works by slightly acidifying your blood, which acts as a powerful respiratory stimulant. It basically tricks your body into breathing deeper and faster, especially while you sleep.
Interesting.
It is widely used on Kilimanjaro with a great deal of success. However, it's vital to remember this is a prescription drug with side effects, including tingling in the extremities and increased urination.
Right, so it isn't suitable for everyone.
Not at all. And we must be entirely clear that this discussion is general educational information, not medical advice. Anyone considering Diamox really needs to consult their doctor well before traveling.
Absolutely, general information only. But assuming you've planned correctly, you've booked the longer route, consulted your doctor, and you're committed to the slow pace, surviving the altitude on the mountain becomes a partnership, doesn't it?
It does. It's a collaboration between your daily habits and the safety protocols of your guide team.
Let's look at the operator's role, because managing altitude safely isn't left to guesswork.
No. A serious ethical operator relies on strict methodology and objective data. The standard practice includes twice daily health checks. They don't just ask how you're feeling.
They track your vitals.
Yes, using a pulse oximeter, a little finger clip, to monitor your heart rate and your blood oxygen saturation trends over time.
I'm looking at this data monitoring requirement, and I have to imagine the psychology involved here. If I've spent thousands of pounds, flown across the world, and told everyone I'm climbing Kilimanjaro,
The pressure is immense.
it is. If I wake up on day 5 with a pounding headache, the temptation to lie to the guide to avoid being pulled off the mountain must be overwhelming.
It's an immensely powerful temptation, driven entirely by the sunk cost fallacy. Climbers focus on the financial costs, the time invested, their own ego, and they lose sight of their immediate physical reality.
But hiding symptoms is dangerous.
It's the fastest way to turn a normal biological reaction into a fatal emergency. If you lie about a persistent headache, your guide loses the opportunity to adjust your pace, manage your hydration, or monitor you for the subtle onset of cerebral edema.
Right.
That's why the objective data from the pulse oximeter is so crucial. The oxygen saturation numbers don't lie, even if the climber tries to act brave.
And a good operator will have backup.
Exactly. An ethical operator will always carry bottled emergency oxygen on every climb to stabilize a patient if things go wrong, and their guides are trained as wilderness first responders.
So the guide manages the safety net, but what is the climber's daily non-negotiable responsibility? Because you aren't just a passive passenger.
No, you carry a tremendous amount of daily responsibility. First, you must hydrate obsessively. You need to consume 3 to 4 liters of water every single day.
4 liters, that's a lot.
It is, but hydration thins the blood slightly, which is crucial when your body is producing more red blood cells and making your blood thicker. Second, you must eat, even when the altitude completely destroys your appetite.
Because your body is burning massive amounts of calories.
Yes, simply trying to maintain its core temperature and adapt to the hypoxia. It requires constant fuel. Third, prioritize rest in camp. And finally, you must practice radical honesty with your guide.
Telling them about a mild headache early on allows them to manage it safely.
Exactly.
But if the guide looks at your vital signs, observes your symptoms, and makes the call that it's over, that must be a devastating moment.
It is deeply disappointing, of course, but it's a moment that requires maturity. As the journal article states, no summit is ever worth more than you are.
That's a powerful quote.
Listening to an experienced wilderness first responder when they tell you to descend is a profound sign of good judgment, not a failure. The mountain will remain there. Your primary goal is always to return home safely.
Quite right. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, if you're preparing for this incredible adventure? Let's recap the core lessons.
Let's do it.
First, altitude sickness is a matter of biology and pace, not a reflection of your physical fitness. Being an elite runner doesn't grant you a biological free pass.
Absolutely not.
Second, your chosen itinerary is your primary shield. Selecting a longer route of 7 to 9 days gives your body the time it desperately needs to adapt using that crucial climb high, sleep low rhythm. Avoid the false economy of the 5-day sprint.
And third, choose your partners carefully. Select an ethical operator who tracks your oxygen saturation, carries emergency medical oxygen, and employs trained medical responders.
And on your end, commit to drinking your 4 liters of water, eating your meals, being entirely transparent about how you feel, and above all, walking pole.
Slowly and steadily.
It's a masterclass in patience and biological respect. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. We've just explored in detail how the human body reacts to the extreme lack of oxygen at nearly 6,000 meters.
It fights us every step of the way.
It really does. If our human biology is so exquisitely tuned to the rich oxygen and high atmospheric pressure of sea level, what does it say about human psychology and ambition that we continually spend our time, our money, and our energy trying to conquer extreme environments where our own bodies are actively begging us to turn around?